What do you mean the house has been sold? Lily's voice came out barely above a whisper as she stared at the real estate agent standing on her mother's porch. The agent, a middle-aged man in a cheap suit, shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I'm just following the closing documents." The property at 847 Maple Street was sold 3 days ago. The new owners take possession next week. Lily felt the world tilt sideways. This couldn't be real. This house, her mother's house, the home where she'd grown up, where her mother had died just 8 months ago, where every corner held a memory, couldn't just be sold. She owned it. Her mother's will had been crystal clear. "There must be a mistake," Lily said, her hands trembling as she pulled out her phone. "I inherited this property. I have the paperwork." The agent glanced at his tablet. According to the county records, the sale was authorized by Margaret Chen, who held power of attorney over the estate. Margaret Chen, Lily's mother-in-law. "My name is Lily Chen and I'm 29 years old. I never imagined that the woman who smiled at my wedding, who called me daughter, who promised to help me through my grief after my mother passed, would be capable of stealing everything my mother left behind. But standing there on that porch, with a stranger telling me I had 1 week to vacate my childhood home, I realized I'd been blind to so many things. I'd worked as a nurse at County General Hospital for 6 years, pulling double shifts, saving every penny I could. My salary of $3,400 a month wasn't much, especially not in a city where a decent apartment costs nearly half of that. But I never minded. I loved my work, loved helping people, loved the feeling of making a difference even in small ways. My husband David Chen came from money, old money. His family owned Chen Enterprises, a commercial real estate development company worth millions. His mother, Margaret Chen, was a 58-year-old woman who wore designer everything and looked at people like me. People who worked with their hands and earned their living through actual labor. Like we were some kind of necessary inconvenience in her perfect world. When David and I met 3 years ago at a hospital fundraiser, I thought I'd found something real. He was different from his family, or so I believed. He was kind, attentive, and he said he loved that I was authentic and down to earth. What I didn't realize was that authentic was just his word for useful. I was the perfect accessory for a man trying to prove he wasn't like his snobby family. We got married 2 years ago. It was a small ceremony. My mother was already sick by then, battling stage 4 cancer, but she made it. She walked me down the aisle, even though every step clearly exhausted her. Margaret had insisted on paying for the wedding, which should have been my first warning sign. Nothing in the Chen family came without strings attached. My mother, Sarah Martinez, died 6 months after my wedding. She was only 54 years old. Breast cancer took her slowly, painfully, and I was there for every moment. The house on Maple Street was all she had to leave me. It wasn't much, just a modest 3-bedroom home in a working-class neighborhood, but it was paid off. Free and clear. My mother had worked 2 jobs for 20 years to pay off that mortgage. She'd scrubbed floors, waited tables, done whatever it took to give me stability and a roof over my head. In her will, she left the house to me. Only to me. She'd made that explicitly clear to her lawyer. This house is for Lily, no one else. Not her husband, not his family. Just my daughter. I should have questioned why Margaret was so interested in helping me handle the estate paperwork after my mother died. I should have been suspicious when she offered to take care of the legal details while I grieved. I should have wondered why she kept asking me to sign documents without really explaining what they were. But I was drowning in grief, working 16-hour shifts at the hospital to avoid going home to an empty house, and I trusted her. She was my husband's mother. She was family. What a stupid, naive mistake that was. Now, standing on the porch as the real estate agent apologized and walked away, Lily pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She called David. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Lily? What's wrong?" "I'm in a meeting. Your mother sold my house." There was a pause. A pause that lasted just a fraction too long. "What are you talking about?" "My mother's house. The one I inherited. Someone just told me it was sold 3 days ago." "Your mother authorized the sale." Another pause. Then David's voice came back, and it sounded different. Distant. "Look, we can talk about this tonight. I really can't do this right now. David, Did you know about this? Lily, I'm hanging up now. We'll discuss it at home. The line went dead. Lily stood there staring at her phone, and something cold settled in her chest. He knew. Of course he knew. He'd probably been part of it from the beginning. She got in her car and drove straight to the Chen family estate, a sprawling mansion in the wealthiest part of the city. The gate was open, which meant Margaret was home. Lily parked her 10-year-old Honda Civic next to Margaret's brand new Mercedes and walked up to the front door. She didn't bother knocking. She walked right in. Margaret was in the sitting room, having tea with two of her society friends. All three women looked up in surprise as Lily entered. "Lily," Margaret said with that fake smile she always wore. "What a surprise. We weren't expecting you. You sold my house." The two friends exchanged glances. Margaret's smile didn't falter. "Ladies, would you excuse us for a moment?" The friends gathered their things quickly and left. Margaret waited until the front door closed before she spoke again. "I did what needed to be done," Margaret said calmly, setting down her teacup. "That property was wasted on you. You weren't even living there. It was mine. My mother left it to me. And you signed the power of attorney documents giving me legal authority to manage the estate." Lily felt sick. "You tricked me. I thought those were just formalities." Margaret stood up, smoothing her skirt. "You should be thanking me, actually. That neighborhood is declining. The property value would have dropped. I sold it for a good price and invested the proceeds wisely." "Where's the money?" Margaret's smile grew sharper. "In a trust. For your future children. When you and David decide to start a family, those funds will be available for their education. It's much more responsible than letting you squander it. That wasn't your decision to make." Margaret stepped closer, and her expression changed. The polite mask slipped, and Lily saw something ugly underneath. Something that had probably always been there. "Listen to me very carefully," Margaret said, her voice low and cold. "People like you don't deserve property. You didn't earn it. You didn't build it. You just got lucky because your mother broke her back working minimum wage jobs. That house was a fluke, a lucky break for someone from your background. But in this family, we don't believe in luck. We believe in bloodlines, in legacy, in proper stewardship of assets." "People like me?" Lily repeated quietly. "Don't act offended. You know exactly what I mean. David married you because he thought you were sweet and harmless. A nice little nurse to play house with. But you're not Chen material. You never will be. That house would have been wasted on you. At least now it's generating real value." Lily stood very still. Every word Margaret spoke felt like a knife, but she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just listened, her face perfectly calm. Because something was happening inside her. Something cold and calculating was taking shape. "Where is David?" Lily asked quietly. "At the office where he should be. He knows this was the right decision. He agreed to it." There it was. Confirmation. Lily nodded slowly. "I see." Margaret looked satisfied, like she'd won. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. It really is for the best. Now why don't you go home and make dinner for my son?" "That's what you're actually good at." Lily turned and walked toward the door. As she reached for the handle, she paused and looked back at Margaret. "You're right about one thing," Lily said. "I didn't build an empire like you did. I just saved lives for a living. Silly me for thinking that mattered." She walked out, got in her car, and drove away. In her rearview mirror, she could see Margaret standing in the doorway, arms crossed, looking smug and victorious. What Margaret didn't know was that Lily had her phone in her pocket the entire time, recording everything, every single word. And what Margaret really didn't know was that Lily's mother had taught her something important before she died. "Baby girl, people will underestimate you your whole life because of where you come from. Let them. It's easier to fight back when they think you're not a threat." Lily drove home to the apartment she shared with David, a luxury condo his parents had bought for them. She walked inside, went to the bedroom, and opened her laptop. If you're enjoying this story and want to see how Lily turns the tables on people who thought she was powerless, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. She pulled up the folder she created 3 months ago. The folder she'd started building the first time she noticed David and Margaret whispering and going silent when she entered the room. The folder she kept adding to every time something felt slightly off. Call it intuition. Call it survival instinct. Call it the wisdom of a woman who'd learned early that the world wasn't fair and you had to protect yourself. Lily had been preparing for something. She just hadn't known exactly what until today. But now she knew. And now the real work would begin. The question wasn't whether she could fight back. The question was how far she was willing to go. David came home at 11 that night. Lily heard his key in the lock, heard him drop his briefcase in the foyer, heard him walk toward the bedroom where she sat on the edge of the bed, still fully dressed, laptop open in front of her. He appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. For a moment, they just looked at each other. "You want to talk about the house?" he said finally, his voice flat. "I want you to tell me the truth." David walked to the dresser and started emptying his pockets. Change, keys, wallet. Like this was just another ordinary evening. "My mother handled the sale. It was a sound financial decision. I didn't ask if it was sound. I asked if you knew about it." He turned to face her, and his expression was different than she'd ever seen it before. Harder. "Of course I knew. I signed off on it." There it was. The confession delivered like he was discussing the weather. "That house was mine," Lily said, keeping her voice steady. "My mother left it to me. And now it's generating actual returns instead of sitting empty while you play sentimental. You should be grateful my mother took the initiative." "Grateful?" David sat down in the armchair across from the bed. "Lily, let's be realistic. You're a nurse. You make, what, $40,000 a year before taxes? That property was worth $350,000. You wouldn't even know how to properly leverage an asset like that. So you just took it. We invested it. There's a difference." Lily's fingers tightened on her laptop. "The money was supposed to go into a trust for our future children." "That's what your mother said?" David laughed. It was a short, cruel sound. "Is that what she told you? That's rich. Where is the money, David?" He stood up, started unbuttoning his shirt. The money went where it needed to go. Chun Enterprises had a development opportunity that required quick capital. We used the proceeds from your house as bridge financing. It's business, Lily. You wouldn't understand. You used my inheritance to fund your family's company? Our family's company, he corrected. You're a Chun now, remember? Or did you forget that part when you signed the marriage certificate? Lily stood up slowly. I want the money back. All of it. David looked at her like she'd just said something absurdly funny. That's not how investments work. The capital is tied up in the development project. You'll see returns eventually. Maybe. If the project succeeds. And if it doesn't. He shrugged. Then you'll have learned an expensive lesson about risk. Lily felt something break inside her chest. Not her heart that had already cracked. This was something else. This was the final illusion shattering. You never loved me, she said quietly. David paused, then turned to look at her. I cared about you. In my way, you were different from the women my mother usually pushed at me. You were real, you know? Genuine. It was refreshing. Was? You're still genuine. That's not the problem. He walked toward the bathroom. The problem is you're starting to act like you deserve things. Like you're entitled to make demands. That was never part of our arrangement. Arrangement? We're married, David. He stopped at the bathroom door. Exactly. You married into the Chun family. That came with benefits. This condo, the car I bought you last year, the country club membership, the credit cards. You think that all came free? Everything has a cost, Lily. Your mother's house was just payment on the debt you owe for the lifestyle you've been enjoying. Lily stared at her husband. The man she'd stood beside at an altar. The man she'd promised her life to. And she realized she'd never actually known him at all. Get out, she said. David raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? Get out of this bedroom. Sleep somewhere else tonight. I can't look at you right now. For a second, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. He wasn't used to her standing up to him. But then he laughed again. This is my condo, Lily. My parents bought it. If anyone's leaving, it's you. He walked into the bathroom and closed the door. A moment later, she heard the shower running. Lily sat back down on the bed. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. From rage. Pure, cold rage. She opened her laptop and clicked on the folder she'd been building. Inside were subfolders, each one carefully labeled and organized. Financial documents. Screenshots of bank statements she'd found by accident 6 weeks ago when David left his laptop open. Transfers to offshore accounts. Payments to a woman named Jessica Reeves, $15,000 a month for the past year. Text messages, conversations between David and his mother that she'd found on an old phone he'd thrown away but hadn't properly wiped. Messages about handling the house situation. Messages about keeping Lily compliant. Messages about the investment opportunity being too good to waste on sentiment. Legal documents. Copies of the power of attorney papers Margaret had made her sign. Lily had taken photos of everything before she'd signed, something her mother had taught her. Never sign anything without keeping your own copy. Property records, information about the sale of her mother's house. The buyer was a shell company. More digging revealed the shell company was owned by Chen Enterprises. They hadn't even sold the house to a third party. They'd sold it to themselves, probably at a below-market price, then planned to flip it for profit. Lily had been gathering evidence for weeks, not knowing exactly what she'd need it for. She'd just known that something was wrong. That her husband and mother-in-law were planning something. She'd grown up watching her mother work 3 jobs at one point, watching her mother negotiate with landlords and debt collectors and bill collectors. Sarah Martinez might not have had money, but she'd had something more valuable. She'd been smart. Street smart. Survivor smart. Baby girl, her mother had told her once when Lily was 16, and crying over a boy who'd used her for homework help then dumped her. Rich people think poor people are stupid. Let them think that. Because while they're underestimating you, you're learning everything about them. And information is the only currency that matters. Lily had thought about that conversation a lot lately. The shower stopped. David would be out soon, probably expecting her to be crying or packing or doing something predictably weak. Instead, Lily opened a new browser window and typed in a name, Rebecca Santos, family law attorney. Rebecca had gone to high school with Lily. They'd been in applied biology together, both scholarship kids in a school full of rich students. Rebecca had gone on to law school on a full scholarship, graduating top of her class. She specialized in divorce cases, particularly ones involving wealthy families trying to screw over less wealthy spouses. They'd reconnected on social media a few months ago. Rebecca had reached out after seeing Lily's posts about her mother's death, offering condolences and her personal number. If you ever need anything at all. Lily pulled out her phone and sent a text. Rebecca, it's Lily Chun. Are you free for coffee tomorrow morning? I need legal advice. The response came back in less than 2 minutes. I'm free at 7 a.m. before my first client. Mario's Cafe on 5th Street. See you there. Lily set down her phone just as David emerged from the bathroom in his pajamas. You still here? He said, smirking. Where else would I go? Good point. You don't actually have anywhere, do you? No house, no savings worth mentioning, and your salary barely covers your own expenses. You need me, Lily. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. He climbed into bed, his back to her, and within minutes was snoring softly. Lily sat there in the dark, listening to her husband sleep, and felt nothing but clarity. Tomorrow she would meet with Rebecca. She would show her everything in that folder, and then she would start building her case. But more than that, she would start building her escape plan. Because David and Margaret had made one critical mistake. They'd assumed that because she came from nothing, she was nothing. They'd forgotten that people who grow up with nothing learn to fight for everything. The next morning, Lily woke at 5:30. David was still asleep. She dressed quietly in her scrubs. She had an early shift at the hospital, grabbed her laptop and left. At Mario's Cafe, Rebecca was already waiting at a corner table with 2 coffees. You look exhausted, Rebecca said as Lily sat down. I found out yesterday that my husband and his mother stole my inheritance and used it to fund their company. Rebecca's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. Start from the beginning. Tell me everything. Lily did. She explained about her mother's death, the house, the power of attorney documents, the sale, Margaret's confession. She pulled out her laptop and showed Rebecca the folder. Every document, every screenshot, every piece of evidence she'd collected. Rebecca examined everything with the focused intensity of a surgeon, which made sense. She was about to cut out a cancer. Finally, Rebecca sat back. This is good. Really good. You've basically done half my job already. Can we get the house back? Probably not. The sale was legally executed, even if it was morally reprehensible. But we can do something better. We can make them pay. Literally. Rebecca pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. First, we file for divorce. Grounds, fraud, coercion, and financial abuse. Second, we demand a full accounting of all marital assets. Third, we subpoena Chen Enterprises' financial records related to the property transaction. Fourth, we go after the offshore accounts. David will fight back. His family has money for lawyers. Let them spend it, Rebecca said with a cold smile. Discovery is going to be very, very interesting for the Chens. Because if they used your inheritance for company business, that's commingling of assets. And if they transferred money offshore without proper declaration, that's a whole different problem involving the IRS. Lily felt something loosen in her chest. Hope, maybe, or something fiercer. How much will this cost me? Rebecca closed her legal pad. For you? Nothing up front. I'll take this on contingency. When we win, and we will win, I get 30% of whatever we recover. Deal? Lily reached across the table and shook Rebecca's hand. Deal. Good. Now go to work. Act normal. Don't let them know anything is coming. I'll drop the papers and we'll serve him next week. At his office during a board meeting if possible. Maximum impact. Lily stood to leave, then paused. Rebecca, why are you doing this? We haven't talked in years. Rebecca's expression softened slightly. Because I grew up watching my mother get screwed over by my rich father and his expensive lawyers. She died broken while he lived in a mansion with his new wife. I became a lawyer so that wouldn't happen to other women. This case? This is exactly why I do what I do. Lily nodded. She understood completely. She went to work, pulled a 12-hour shift in the ES, saved 2 lives, assisted in 3 surgeries, and held the hand of a dying woman who had no family while she took her last breath. This was who Lily was. This was what she did. And when she got home that night, David was waiting with flowers and a smile. I was too harsh last night, he said. I'm sorry. Let's go out to dinner. Somewhere nice. Make up properly. Lily took the flowers and put them in a vase. That sounds perfect, she said, smiling back. Because she could play the game too. She'd learned from the best. Her mother, who'd smiled at landlords while hiding money in her shoes. Who'd been polite to bosses who underpaid her while secretly documenting every labor violation. Survival wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was quiet and patient and strategic. And Lily was nothing if not a survivor. What David didn't know was that in exactly 6 days, his whole world would come crashing down. And his mother's world would follow shortly after. They thought they'd won. They thought she was beaten. They thought people like her just accepted their place and moved on. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. 6 days. That's all Lily had to play the perfect wife, while Rebecca prepared the legal nuclear bomb that would detonate David and Margaret's comfortable little world. Those 6 days were the longest of Lily's life. She smiled at David over breakfast. She asked about his day at work. She even attended a dinner party at Margaret's house, wearing the dress Margaret had bought her, the one that made her look more appropriate for Chen family events. At that dinner, Margaret pulled her aside in the powder room. I'm glad you've come to your senses about the house situation, Margaret said, reapplying her lipstick in the mirror. David told me you'd calm down. I knew you'd see reason eventually. You're a smart girl, Lily. Smart enough to know when you're outmatched. Lily dried her hands on the embroidered towel. You're right, Margaret. I was being emotional. I see now that you were just trying to help. Margaret smiled, satisfied. That's what I like to hear. You know, if you keep this attitude, I might even consider giving you a small allowance from the trust. Something for personal expenses. A woman should have her own money for shopping, don't you think? That's very generous, Lily said, her voice perfectly sweet. What Margaret didn't know was that Lily's phone was in her dress pocket, recording every word. Just like it had been recording every conversation for the past week. But playing nice wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was watching David operate like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just stolen her mother's legacy and thrown it away. Like his wife was just another asset he'd acquired and could depreciate over time. On day 3 of the countdown, David came home with papers for her to sign. What are these? Lily asked, looking at the documents spread across their dining table. Just some updates to our joint accounts. Routine stuff. My accountant needs your signature. Lily picked up the papers and actually read them this time. They were transfer authorizations. If she signed, she'd be giving David complete control over the small savings account she'd maintained separately. The one with the $12,000 she'd saved from her nursing shifts over the years. Why do you need access to my account? She asked carefully. David's jaw tightened. Because married couples share finances, Lily. It's weird that you've been keeping money separate. It makes it look like you don't trust me. I do trust you, Lily lied smoothly. I just don't understand why this is suddenly necessary. Because my mother thinks it's inappropriate. She says it looks like you're planning an exit strategy, and that reflects badly on the family. There it was. Margaret was tightening the noose, making sure Lily had zero financial independence. Can I think about it? Lily asked. David's expression hardened. Think about it? Lily, this is a simple signature. Unless you're hiding something. I'm not hiding anything. I just like to read things before I sign them. Remember the power of attorney papers? You said I should have read those more carefully. It was a small dig, but David didn't catch the sarcasm. He just sighed, impatient. Fine. You have until tomorrow. But this is getting ridiculous. My mother is right about you. Right about what? That you're starting to act entitled. Forgetting your place. Lily felt the rage flare again, but she pushed it down. I'll sign them tomorrow, she said quietly. I promise. But she had no intention of signing anything. By tomorrow, those papers would be evidence in her divorce filing. That night, while David snored beside her, Lily received a text from Rebecca. Everything is ready. Ready. We serve the papers tomorrow at 2 p.m. during the board meeting. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Lily typed back. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The next morning, day 4, Lily went to work as usual. But during her lunch break, she met with someone she'd been cultivating as an ally for the past week. Thomas Park, a private investigator who specialized in asset searches. Thomas was a former cop, 52 years old, with the kind of face that people forgot easily. Perfect for surveillance work. I've got what you asked for, Thomas said, sliding a folder across the table at the small diner where they'd agreed to meet. Lily opened the folder. Inside were photographs. David having lunch with a young woman. David entering an apartment building with the same woman. David leaving that apartment building 3 hours later. Who is she? Lily asked, though she already knew from the financial documents she'd found. This was just confirmation. Jessica Reeves, 26 years old, marketing consultant. Your husband has been paying her rent for the past 14 months. 1,500 square foot apartment in the Pearl District. He visits every Tuesday and Thursday. Lily studied the photos. Jessica was beautiful, young, and looked nothing like her. Is this enough for the divorce? More than enough. But there's something else you should know. Thomas pulled out another document. I traced the property sale of your mother's house. The shell company that bought it? It's owned by Chen Enterprises like you suspected. But they didn't just buy it to flip it. What do you mean? They demolished it. Knocked it down 2 weeks ago. They're building a luxury condo development on that lot and the 3 neighboring properties they also acquired. The project value is estimated at $12 million. Lily felt sick. They hadn't just taken her house, they'd erased it. Erased every memory, every piece of her mother's life. Bulldozed it to build something for rich people. How much did they pay for my mother's house in the shell company sale? 210,000. Well below market value. And the property was appraised at 350 when my mother died. Exactly. They essentially stole 140,000 from you by undervaluing it in an internal sale. Lily's hands tightened on the folder. Can we use this? Absolutely. This is fraud. Clear as day. And if the development is already underway, we can potentially claim a portion of the project value. Since it was built on the foundation of stolen property, Lily closed the folder carefully. How much do I owe you for this? Your lawyer friend already took care of it. She said you two go way back. Lily made a mental note to thank Rebecca properly when this was all over. She returned to the hospital for her afternoon shift, but her mind was racing. Everything was falling into place. All the pieces were moving into position. At exactly 2 p.m., while Lily was checking on a patient in room 437, her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Papers served. He's been notified. All hell is breaking loose. Brace yourself. Lily took a deep breath. It was done. There was no going back now. Her phone started ringing 20 minutes later. David. She didn't answer. He called 6 more times. Then Margaret started calling. Lily ignored every call. At 3:30, David showed up at the hospital. Security called up to her floor. Mrs. Chun, your husband is in the lobby. He's quite agitated and demanding to see you. Tell him I'm with a patient and can't be disturbed, Lily said calmly. He's making a scene, ma'am. Then call the police and have him removed. He's disrupting a medical facility. There was a pause. Then, yes, ma'am. 20 minutes later, security called back. Your husband has been escorted from the premises. He's banned from the building for 48 hours. Lily felt a small smile cross her face. First point to her. When her shift ended at 7, Lily didn't go home. Instead, she went to a hotel, a modest place she'd booked 3 days earlier under her maiden name. Rebecca had advised her to establish a separate residence immediately after serving papers. The room was small but clean. Lily set down her bag and sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing herself to feel the weight of what she'd just done. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. You have no idea who you're messing with. Margaret. Had to be. Another text. I gave you everything. This is how you repay me. David. Lily blocked both numbers and opened her laptop. Rebecca had sent over the full divorce filing. Lily read through it, seeing in legal language everything they discussed. Fraud, coercion, financial, abuse, adultery, misappropriation of inherited assets. Attached was another document, a restraining order request against both David and Margaret, citing harassment and potential financial harm. Her phone rang. This time it was her supervisor at the hospital, Dr. Chen, no relation to David, thankfully. Lily, I just got a very interesting phone call, Dr. Chen said. From a Margaret Chen claiming to be your mother-in-law. She said you're having a mental breakdown and shouldn't be working. She tried to get me to put you on medical leave. Lily closed her eyes. Of course Margaret would try that angle. I'm not having a breakdown, Dr. Chen. I'm getting divorced. My soon-to-be ex-husband and his mother are retaliating. That's what I figured. I told Mrs. Chen that personnel decisions are made by me, not by family members of staff, and that if she called again, I'd report it as harassment. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Thank you. For what it's worth, Lily, you're one of the best nurses on my team. Whatever you're going through, your job is secure. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. Lily felt tears prick her eyes. I appreciate that more than you know. After hanging up, Lily ordered room service and tried to eat, but she could barely taste the food. Her mind kept going back to her mother's house. To the fact that it was gone, demolished, turned into rubble to make way for luxury condos that people like her could never afford. Her phone buzzed again. Rebecca, David's lawyer called. Wants to negotiate. I told him we're not interested. Discovery starts next week. Are you ready for this to get ugly? Lily typed back. It's already ugly. Let's make it worth it. The next morning, day 5 since the countdown began, Lily woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Some from David, some from Margaret, some from David's siblings. Some from people she barely knew, Chen family friends who'd been mobilized to contact her. All of them said basically the same thing. She was making a mistake. She was being irrational. She needed to think about her future. David was willing to forgive her if she dropped the divorce immediately. Lily deleted every message without reading them fully. She went to work, pulled another shift, and during her break, met with Rebecca at a coffee shop near the hospital. "They're panicking," Rebecca said with satisfaction. "David's lawyer is scrambling. Apparently, the offshore accounts you found, those weren't properly declared. The IRS is going to be very interested." "What about the house?" "We've filed a motion to halt construction on the development until the ownership dispute is resolved. It won't succeed, but it'll tie them up in court and cost them money. More importantly, it'll make the fraud public record." Lily sipped her coffee. "Margaret called my supervisor trying to get me fired or put on leave." Rebecca's expression darkened. "That's harassment. Document everything. Every call, every text, every contact. We're building a pattern." She also told David's family that I'm mentally unstable. Defamation. Added to the list. Lily looked at her old friend. "Rebecca, what are our actual chances here? Really?" Rebecca leaned forward. "The divorce will go through. That's guaranteed. The adultery alone is enough. The question is how much you walk away with. If we can prove fraud in the property sale, and we can, you're looking at a significant settlement. Plus, if the IRS gets involved with those offshore accounts, David's going to be more worried about staying out of prison than fighting over money. And Margaret's trickier. She's not your spouse, so we can't touch her directly in the divorce. But we can subpoena her as a witness, and we can potentially pursue a separate civil suit for fraud and elder abuse." "My mother wasn't elderly. She was terminally ill when these documents were signed. That's close enough." "Margaret exploited a dying woman's daughter during a vulnerable time." A jury would love that story. Lily felt something settle in her chest. Not quite peace, but close. Determination. "When do we go to court?" "Preliminary hearing is in 3 weeks. But discovery starts Monday. That's when we get to demand all their financial records, emails, text messages, everything. They're going to fight it, but they'll lose. And once we have access to their records, we'll know everything." Lily finished her coffee. "I have one more thing I need to do." "What's that?" "I need to visit my mother's house. Or what's left of it." That evening, Lily drove to Maple Street. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the neighborhood. When she reached 847, her chest tightened. There was nothing left. Just an empty lot surrounded by chain-link fencing. Construction equipment sat idle. A sign on the fence read, "Chun Luxury Residences coming soon, premium living for discerning buyers." Lily got out of her car and walked to the fence. She wrapped her fingers around the cold metal and stared at the empty space where her childhood had happened. Where her mother had raised her alone. Where every holiday, every birthday, every ordinary day had occurred. Gone. All of it. But as she stood there, something interesting caught her eye. A small tree in the far corner of the lot. Her mother's apple tree. The one her mother had planted when Lily was 5 years old. It was still standing. Somehow, in all the demolition, they'd missed it. Lily pulled out her phone and took a picture. Then she called Rebecca. "That tree," Lily said. "My mother planted it. It's still on the property. Can we use that?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Possibly. If your mother planted it, you could argue it's a personal monument. We might be able to get an injunction protecting it. It won't stop the development, but it'll slow them down and cost them more money. Do it." "Lily, it's just a tree." "No," Lily said quietly. "It's not just a tree. It's proof that my mother existed. That she built something. That she mattered. And I'm not letting them erase that too." She could hear Rebecca smile through the phone. "I'll file the paperwork tomorrow." As Lily drove back to her hotel, her phone rang one more time. David. Against her better judgment, she answered. "What do you want?" "To talk, face to face, no lawyers. Just us." His voice was different, not angry, almost pleading. There's nothing to talk about. Lily, please, I know I messed up. I know my mother went too far, but we can fix this. We can work it out. You stole my mother's house and bulldozed it, David. You used my inheritance to fund your company. You've been cheating on me for over a year. What exactly is there to work out? There was a long pause. Then David's voice changed again. Back to cold. You're never going to win this. My family has resources you can't even imagine. We'll bury you in legal fees. We'll destroy your reputation. We'll make sure you never work as a nurse again. Is that really what you want? Lily felt ice run through her veins. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. Drop the divorce. Come home. Apologize to my mother. And maybe we can move past this. Goodbye. David. She hung up and immediately called Rebecca, reporting the threatening call. Rebecca told her to save the recording. It was more evidence. That night, alone in her hotel room, Lily couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what David had said. About resources and lawyers and reputation. He was right about one thing. The Chuns had money and power. But Lily had something they'd underestimated. She had nothing left to lose. And that made her more dangerous than they could possibly understand. Because people with nothing to lose fight differently. They fight harder. They fight smarter. And they never, ever back down. Tomorrow was day 6. The last day before the real war began. And Lily was ready. More than ready. She'd spent her whole life watching powerful people underestimate her. Watching them assume that quiet meant weak. That poor meant stupid. That nice meant pushover. The Chuns were about to learn what every bully eventually learns. The quiet ones are quiet for a reason. They're listening. They're learning. They're planning. And when they finally speak up, they have a lot to say. Discovery began on Monday morning, exactly 3 weeks before the preliminary hearing. Rebecca's legal team filed requests for every document. Every email, every text message, every financial record from Chun Enterprises. David's personal accounts, and Margaret's accounts related to the property sale. David's lawyers fought back hard. They filed motions to dismiss, motions to limit discovery. Motions claiming attorney-client privilege, spousal privilege, every privilege they could think of. The judge denied them all. Mrs. Chun has presented prima facie evidence of fraud, Judge Anderson said from the bench during the first hearing. Discovery will proceed in full. Mr. Chun, if you have nothing to hide, you should have no objection to transparency. Lily sat in the gallery watching David's face turn red. Margaret sat beside him, her expression carved from ice, but Lily could see the fear underneath. They were scared. Actually scared. Over the next 2 weeks, the documents came flooding in. Boxes of financial records, hard drives full of emails, phone records, bank statements. Rebecca and her team worked around the clock, and what they found was even worse than Lily had suspected. The offshore accounts weren't just for David's affair. They were tax shelters. Chun Enterprises had been funneling money overseas for years, avoiding millions in taxes. The property sale wasn't just fraud against Lily. It was part of a larger pattern. Margaret had done this before, to other people. A disabled veteran who'd inherited his mother's property. An elderly widow who'd signed papers she didn't understand. 4 cases in total over the past 6 years where Margaret had used her legal connections to acquire properties below market value, then folded them into Chun development projects. This isn't just your case anymore, Rebecca told Lily during a late-night meeting at her office. This is a criminal enterprise. I've already contacted the district attorney's office. They're interested. Very interested. Lily stared at the documents spread across Rebecca's desk. She's been doing this to people for years? People she thought were too weak or too poor to fight back. People who didn't understand their rights. You're the first one who had the documentation and the courage to push back. What happens now? Rebecca leaned back in her chair. Now we have leverage. David's lawyers know what we found. They know the IRS is looking at those offshore accounts. They know the day is building a case. They're going to want to settle. Fast. I don't want to settle. Lily, I want them exposed. Publicly. I want everyone to know what they did. Rebecca studied her for a long moment.
That's going to get messy. Really messy. Are you prepared for that?
They demolished my mother's house. They tried to erase her existence. They called me nothing. Yes, I'm prepared. 3 days later, the story broke.
A local investigative journalist named Marcus Webb, someone Rebecca had strategically leaked information to,
published a front-page article. Luxury developer accused of systematic fraud. Chen Enterprises faces criminal investigation.
The article detailed everything. The offshore accounts.
The pattern of property fraud. Lily's specific case, including the fact that they demolished her late mother's home to build luxury condos.
The public reaction was immediate and fierce. Chen Enterprises' social media accounts were flooded with angry comments.
News vans parked outside their office building. Investors started calling, demanding answers.
And then something beautiful happened. The other victims came forward.
The disabled veteran, James Martinez, called Rebecca's office.
I saw the article. She did the same thing to me. Took my mother's property after she died.
I thought I had no choice but to accept it. The elderly widow, Patricia Wong, sent an email.
I signed papers I didn't understand.
Margaret Chen told me it was just paperwork.
She took everything.
2 more victims contacted them within 48 hours. Rebecca filed an amended complaint, adding the other victims as co-plaintiffs in a class action lawsuit against Margaret Chen and Chen Enterprises. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for Friday. Lily took the day off work. She dressed in a simple navy suit, her mother's gold cross necklace around her neck, and walked into the courthouse with her head high. The gallery was packed. News reporters.
The other victims and their families. Chen Enterprise employees.
David's siblings.
And sitting in the front row on the defense side, Margaret Chen looking smaller than Lily had ever seen her.
David wasn't there. His lawyers claimed he was ill, but Lily suspected he was hiding.
Judge Anderson entered, and everyone stood. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Rebecca presented evidence after evidence. Bank records showing the offshore transfers.
Emails between Margaret and David discussing handling.
Lily. Text messages calling her manageable and naive. Then Rebecca played the recording from Margaret's sitting room.
The one where Margaret had said, "People like you don't deserve property." The courtroom went silent. Margaret's face drained of color. Her lawyer jumped up. "Your Honor, that recording was obtained without consent. In a one-party consent state." Rebecca interrupted smoothly.
Perfectly legal. Mrs. Chen was present and aware she was speaking.
She just didn't know she was being documented. Judge Anderson looked at Margaret with open disgust.
"Mrs. Chen, did you make that statement?"
Margaret's lawyer whispered frantically to her. Finally, Margaret spoke, her voice thin. "I was taken out of context. Yes or no, Mrs. Chen?" I
may have said something similar, but thank you."
"That's sufficient." Rebecca continued. She presented Thomas's evidence about the demolition. Photographs of Lily's childhood home being torn down.
The construction project built on stolen property. Then she brought up the apple tree.
"Your Honor, on the property at 847 Maple Street, there remains one tree."
An apple tree planted by Mrs. Chen's late mother, Sarah Martinez, 24 years ago.
It's the only physical evidence remaining of Mrs. Martinez's life and legacy.
We're requesting an immediate injunction to protect that tree from destruction.
David's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this is absurd. We can't halt an entire development project over a tree that represents the only remaining monument to a deceased woman whose property was fraudulently taken from her daughter." Rebecca shot back. "A woman whose home was demolished without her daughter's knowledge or consent." Judge Anderson looked at the photographs.
Lily could see something shift in his expression.
"Injunction granted.
That tree is not to be touched pending resolution of this case. If it's harmed in any way, I'll hold the defendants in contempt." There was a gasp from the defense table.
But Rebecca wasn't finished. "Your Honor, we have one more witness we'd like to call. Jessica Reeves." Lily's head snapped up. She hadn't known Rebecca was planning this. A young woman stood from the back of the gallery. Jessica, David's mistress. Jessica walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, and sat down. She looked terrified. "Miss Reeves," Rebecca said gently. "How do you know David Chen?" He was my boyfriend. For 14 months. Were you aware he was married?" Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "Not at first. He told me he was divorced. But then I found out the truth about 6 months ago."
Why didn't you end the relationship?
"He said he was going to leave his wife. He said she was just temporary. That she was from a poor family and he'd only married her to prove something to his mother. He said he was waiting for the right time." The courtroom erupted. Judge Anderson banged his gavel. Rebecca continued.
Did David Chen ever discuss financial matters with you? He told me about a property deal. His wife's mother had died and left her a house. He said his mother had a plan to acquire it cheaply.
He bragged about it. Said it was brilliant business. Did he indicate whether his wife knew about this plan? He said she was too dumb to understand. Those were his words.
Too dumb to understand business. If you've been following Lily's journey and want to see how justice is fully served, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Margaret stood up suddenly. This is a lie. David would never.
"Mrs. Chen."
"Sit down," Judge Anderson ordered.
But Margaret ignored him. She turned to Lily, her face twisted with rage.
"You did this. You brought that woman here.
You ruined everything. You're nothing but a vindictive little Mrs. Chen.
One more word and I'll hold you in contempt." Margaret's lawyer pulled her back down, but the damage was done. The mask had completely fallen. Everyone in that courtroom had seen the real Margaret Chen. Rebecca rested her case.
David's lawyers tried to present their defense, but it was weak. They claimed miscommunication, misunderstanding,
Business decisions that looked bad in hindsight but weren't criminal. No one was buying it.
Judge Anderson called a recess. When he returned 30 minutes later, his expression was grave. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented today. Mrs. Chen,
I'm granting you a temporary restraining order against both David Chen and Margaret Chen. I'm
also freezing all Chen Enterprise accounts related to the Maple Street development pending a full audit.
And I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal investigation." He looked directly at Margaret. "Mrs. Chen, what you've done is not just unethical. It's potentially criminal.
You've exploited vulnerable people during their time of grief. You've enriched yourself and your family at their expense. And you've shown no remorse." Margaret's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client has been a pillar of this community. Your client is a predator in expensive clothes.
Bail is set at $500,000 pending criminal charges." The courtroom exploded. Reporters rushed out to file their stories. The other victims were crying with relief. Margaret sat frozen, her face ashen. Lily stood slowly and walked out of the courthouse. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "Mrs. Chen, how do you feel?"
"What do you want to say to your husband? Are you satisfied with the judge's decision?" Lily stopped at the top of the courthouse steps.
Rebecca touched her arm, warning her to be careful. But Lily shook her head. She'd been silent long enough. "My mother was a housekeeper," Lily said, her voice steady and clear.
"She cleaned other people's homes. She worked 3 jobs to give me a roof over my head.
She never asked for charity. She never complained. She just worked. And when she died, the one thing she had to leave me was her house. The house she'd paid for with her own hands." The cameras captured every word.
David Chen and Margaret Chen took that house. They took it through manipulation and fraud. They demolished it.
They erased my mother's memory like she never existed.
Because to them, people like my mother, people like me, we don't matter.
We're just obstacles. Just poor people who should know our place. Lily's voice didn't waver. But I didn't know my place. I fought back. And now everyone knows what they are.
Now everyone sees them for what they truly are.
Thieves in expensive suits who prey on people they think are too weak to fight back. She looked directly into the nearest camera. To anyone else out there who's been taken advantage of by powerful people who think you're nothing. You're not nothing. Your life matters, your family matters, your legacy matters. And if you fight back, if you document everything and find the right people to help you, you can win.
Lily turned and walked down the steps. Behind her, she could hear more questions being shouted, but she didn't stop.
Rebecca caught up with her at the street corner.
That was either brilliant or insane. Maybe both. You know the Chuns are going to come after you even harder now. Lily looked at her friend.
Let them try. They have nothing left, no reputation, no moral authority, no public support.
What are they going to do that they haven't already done? Rebecca smiled slowly.
You know what? You're right.
They're finished. That evening, Lily's phone exploded with messages.
Supportive messages from coworkers, from former patients, from complete strangers who'd seen the news coverage. One message stood out. From an unknown number. I'm sorry. I should have stopped her years ago. Robert Chun, Robert, David's older brother. Lily had met him twice.
He'd always seemed uncomfortable at family gatherings, like he didn't quite fit.
She didn't respond, but she saved the message. Another text came through. This one from David. You destroyed my life.
I hope you're happy. Lily stared at that message for a long time. Then she typed back. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure everyone could see it. She blocked his number after that. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Nurse exposes wealthy family's fraud scheme.
Chun Enterprises faces criminal charges.
Judge protects apple tree in emotional property dispute. That last headline made Lily smile. Her mother's tree was safe. Over the next week, things moved fast.
The Day filed criminal charges against Margaret. Fraud, elder exploitation, theft by deception. David was named as an accomplice. Chun Enterprises Board of Directors held an emergency meeting and voted to remove both David and Margaret from all leadership positions.
The offshore accounts were seized by the IRS. The total owed in back taxes and penalties was over $8 million. And the other victims, the ones who'd come forward after seeing Lily's case, they all received settlements.
James Martinez got his mother's property back. Patricia Wong received compensation that allowed her to buy a new home.
Lily's divorce proceeded rapidly. David's lawyers, knowing they had no leverage, agreed to a settlement. Lily received full compensation for the house's actual value, $350,000, plus damages for emotional distress, plus half of the marital assets. The total came to $700,000. It wasn't just money.
It was vindication. It was justice. It was proof that she'd been right all along. But the sweetest victory came 2 weeks later, when Rebecca called with unexpected news.
The development project on Maple Street has been canceled, Rebecca said.
Chun Enterprises is bankrupt. They're liquidating assets.
And guess what's up for auction?
The Maple Street property?
Exactly. With the tree still standing, Lily felt her heart race.
How much? With the liens and the legal complications, probably about $200,000, maybe less. Are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Lily smiled. I want to buy it back. All of it. I want to buy my mother's land, even without the house. Especially without the house.
I'll build a new one. A better one.
But it'll be on my mother's land.
Where it belongs. 3 weeks later, Lily stood on the empty lot at 847 Maple Street. The construction equipment was gone. The chain-link fence had been removed.
It was just empty land and one apple tree.
She walked to the tree and placed her hand on its bark. I got it back, Mom, she whispered.
I got it all back. The tree's branches swayed in the breeze, almost like an answer.
Lily pulled out her phone and took a picture. Then she posted it on social media with a simple caption.
Some things can't be destroyed. Some legacies can't be erased. This tree survived. So did I within hours. The post went viral.
Thousands of people shared it, commented on it, told their own stories of fighting back against injustice. Lily had become something she never intended to be. A symbol of resistance, of resilience, of refusing to accept what powerful people told you was inevitable. And as she stood there on her mother's land, with her mother's tree rustling above her, Lily realized something profound. Margaret had been wrong about everything. People like Lily did deserve property. They deserved respect. They deserved justice. And when you tried to take those things away, when you underestimated them, When you assumed they'd never fight back, you'd better be prepared for the consequences. Because the quiet ones, the ones from nothing, the ones you dismiss and demean, they're the most dangerous of all.
They have nothing to lose and everything to prove. And they never, ever forget.
6 months after the trial, Lily stood in front of a newly constructed house at 847 Maple Street. It wasn't large or extravagant.
It was a simple, beautiful 2-bedroom home with white siding and a wraparound porch. Behind it, her mother's apple tree stood tall, its branches heavy with fruit.
The house had cost her $180,000 to build.
She'd used some of the settlement money, but she'd also saved aggressively, picking up extra shifts, living modestly.
This wasn't just a house. It was a statement.
It was proof that everything Margaret had tried to destroy, Lily had rebuilt stronger. Rebecca stood beside her, holding a bottle of champagne.
Your mother would be so proud.
Lily smiled, her eyes bright.
She taught me everything I needed to know.
I just had to remember the lessons. They walked inside.
The interior was warm and filled with light. Photographs of Lily's mother lined the walls. The kitchen had the same layout as the original house, a deliberate choice.
Some things deserve to be honored, not erased. Have you heard about Margaret? Rebecca asked, pouring champagne into 2 glasses. Lily nodded.
She'd heard, everyone had heard.
Margaret Chen had been sentenced to 4 years in prison for fraud and elder exploitation.
The judge had been harsh,
citing her pattern of predatory behavior and complete lack of remorse. Her lawyer had tried to argue for house arrest,
claiming her age and health issues, but the other victims had testified, and their stories had sealed Margaret's fate. She looked so small when they led her away in handcuffs, Rebecca said quietly.
Nothing like the woman who sat in her mansion judging everyone. That's because the mansion was never really hers, Lily said. It was built on other people's suffering.
When you take that away, there's nothing left. David had avoided prison, but barely. He'd cooperated with prosecutors, testifying against his mother in exchange for probation and community service.
Chen Enterprises had dissolved completely. The family fortune, built over 3 generations, was gone. Seized by the IRS, distributed to victims, consumed by legal fees.
Last Lily had heard, David was living in a 1-bedroom apartment across the city,
working as a regional manager for a restaurant chain. Not his own restaurants. Someone else's, making $45,000 a year. Exactly the kind of salary he'd once mocked her for earning. The irony wasn't lost on anyone.
Do you ever feel bad for him? Rebecca asked. Lily considered the question.
No, I feel bad for the person I was when I met him. The person who thought she needed his approval, his money, his family's acceptance. But David himself, he made his choices. He chose to steal from me. He chose to betray me. He chose to think I was beneath him.
Those were his decisions. And now he's living the life he thought you should be grateful to escape. Exactly. They drank their champagne and toasted to new beginnings.
Later that evening, Lily drove to County General Hospital. She'd been promoted to charge nurse 3 months ago, a position that came with a salary increase to $52,000 a year.
It wasn't a fortune, but combined with smart investing of her settlement money, Lily was more financially secure than she'd ever been.
More importantly, she was doing work that mattered, work that saved lives, work that helped people. Dr. Chen stopped her in the hallway.
Lily, there's someone in the waiting room asking for you.
Says it's personal.
Lily's stomach tightened. She walked to the waiting room and found Robert Chen, David's older brother, sitting in the corner. He stood when he saw her. I'm sorry to show up unannounced. I needed to talk to you. They stepped outside into the cool evening air. I should have said something years ago. Robert began. I knew my mother was manipulating people. I knew David was following her lead.
But I told myself it was just business, just the way our family operated.
I was a coward. Lily studied him. He looked genuinely tormented. Why are you telling me this now? Because you were right about everything. About my mother, about David, about our family.
We built everything on other people's suffering, and we told ourselves we deserved it because we were smarter, better, more capable. But we weren't. We were just cruel. What do you want from me, Robert?
Nothing. I just wanted you to know that not all of us are like them. Some of us see what you did.
We see that you fought back when everyone said you couldn't win. You exposed a system that hurt a lot of people.
And you did it without becoming like them. Lily felt something loosen in her chest.
Thank you for saying that. Robert handed her an envelope. This is information about 2 other families my mother targeted. I found it going through her old files.
They never came forward during the trial. They might not even know they have a case.
But I thought you should have it. Maybe pass it to your lawyer. Lily took the envelope.
You could have just sent this to Rebecca directly.
I could have. But I wanted to apologize to you in person.
You deserved at least that much. After Robert left, Lily opened the envelope. Inside were documents detailing 2 more property schemes from years ago. Margaret's fraud went back even further than anyone had known. Lily called Rebecca immediately. We have more victims. I'll reach out to them tomorrow. Lily, this case might never fully close. Margaret hurt a lot of people. Then we'll help as many as we can. For as long as it takes. 2 weeks later, Lily received an unexpected invitation. The local news station wanted to do a feature story on her. From victim to victor. One woman's fight against injustice. Lily almost declined. She'd never wanted to be famous.
She just wanted justice. But then she thought about all the messages she'd received from strangers. People who'd been exploited by employers, by family members, by systems designed to protect the powerful. People who'd said her story gave them courage to fight back.
She agreed to the interview.
The reporter, Sarah Vance, met her at the Maple Street house.
They sat on the porch, the apple tree visible in the background.
What do you want people to understand about your experience?
Sarah asked. Lily thought carefully before answering.
I want them to understand that justice isn't always immediate. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes documentation and patience and the right allies.
But it's possible. What would you say to someone in a similar situation?
Document everything. Trust your instincts.
Don't let powerful people convince you that their version of reality is the only one. And find people who believe in you because you can't fight these battles alone. Do you have any regrets? Lily looked at the apple tree.
I regret not seeing the warning signs earlier. I regret trusting people who didn't deserve it. But I don't regret fighting back. Not for a second. The interview aired the following week.
Lily watched it at home with a cup of tea, still slightly uncomfortable seeing herself on television. But the response was overwhelming. Her story resonated with thousands of people.
Support groups reached out, asking her to speak at events.
Law schools wanted her to guest lecture about victims' rights. Lily accepted some invitations and declined others.
She was still a nurse first. That would never change.
3 months later, something remarkable happened. The city council voted to rename the small park near Maple Street. It was now called Sarah Martinez Memorial Park, in honor of Lily's mother. At the dedication ceremony, Lily stood in front of a crowd of neighbors,
former victims from Margaret's schemes and community members who'd followed her case.
My mother never asked for recognition, Lily said, her voice steady despite the emotion welling up inside her. She just worked hard, loved completely, and tried to give me a better life than she had.
This park isn't about revenge or bitterness. It's about remembering that every person matters.
Every life has value. Whether you're rich or poor, powerful or struggling, you deserve to be treated with dignity. The crowd applauded. James Martinez, the disabled veteran who'd also been victimized by Margaret, shook Lily's hand. Your mother raised a warrior. She raised a survivor. Lily corrected.
There's a difference. 1 year after the trial, Lily sat in her kitchen grading papers.
She'd started teaching a free financial literacy class at the community center, helping people understand contracts, property rights, and how to protect themselves from fraud. Her doorbell rang. She opened it to find a young woman, maybe 23 years old, holding a folder.
Mrs. Chun, I'm Maria Santos. I
think I might need your help. Lily invited her in, made coffee, and listened to Maria's story. It was familiar in its details.
A wealthy employer. Documents signed under pressure. property that had mysteriously disappeared into a corporation's holdings.
I don't know what to do, Maria said, tears streaming down her face.
I can't afford a lawyer.
I don't have proof. Everyone says I should just accept it and move on.
Lily pulled out her phone and called Rebecca.
I have someone you need to meet.
Because that's what Lily did now.
She helped people fight back. She connected victims with resources. She taught them what she'd learned. Margaret Chen had called her nothing,
had said people like her didn't deserve property or respect or justice. But Lily had proved that the opposite was true.
People like her. People from nothing. People who'd been underestimated their entire lives. They were the ones who changed systems. They were the ones who fought when fighting seemed impossible. They were the ones who planted apple trees that survived demolition. As Lily sat with Maria, explaining the process ahead, she thought about everything she'd been through. The betrayal, the theft, the courtroom battles, the moments when giving up seemed easier than fighting. And she thought about where she was now. In a house she'd built herself. On land she'd reclaimed. Doing work that mattered. Helping others find their own justice. Margaret had been wrong about everything. The best revenge wasn't anger or bitterness, or becoming like your enemies. The best revenge was building something beautiful from the ashes of what they'd tried to destroy. The best revenge was proving that your worth was never determined by their opinion.
The best revenge was thriving. Genuinely thriving. Not because of them, or in spite of them, but independent of them entirely.
David had texted her once months ago, from a new number she hadn't blocked yet. Do you feel like you won? Lily had thought about that question for a long time before responding. I feel like I survived.
And that's better than winning.
Because winning implied the game had been fair, that both sides had equal power, that the outcome had been in doubt. But survival? Survival meant you'd face something designed to destroy you, and you'd refuse to be destroyed. Survival meant you'd taken the worst thing that could happen and transformed it into your origin story, not your ending. Lily had survived. She'd rebuilt. She'd helped others do the same.
And every morning when she woke up in her house on Maple Street, when she looked out her window at her mother's apple tree bearing fruit,
when she got ready for another shift saving lives at the hospital, she felt something Margaret and David would never understand. She felt free.
If this story moved you, if it reminded you that fighting back is always possible, subscribe to this channel for more stories about real justice and the strength it takes to reclaim your life.
Margaret Chen thought people like Lily didn't deserve anything. She thought cruelty disguised as business was just how the world worked. She thought power and money made you untouchable. She learned the hardest lesson of all. The people you underestimate are often the ones who change everything.
And the legacy you try to erase?
It grows back stronger, deeper, more resilient than before.
Just like an apple tree that refuses to die.
Just like a daughter who refused to forget.
Just like justice that arrives late but arrives completely. Just like justice that arrives completely. Just like justice that arrives late but arrives completely.
Lily had learned what her mother always knew. Your worth isn't measured by what others take from you. It's measured by what you build after they're done taking. And Lily had built something beautiful.